vampires, Robin, Jimmy Olsen, and Superman flying a Bloodsucker into the sunrise. Welcome to one of the weirdest detours in Man of Steel history. In this episode, we're breaking down Superman, the Man of Steel number 14 from 1992, a strange, supernatural romp featuring the first appearance of the vampire Ruthven, and an unlikely team-up between the Boy Wonder and Superman's favorite photographer. But we're not just talking story beats here. We'll dive deep into the creative forces behind this issue. Louise Simonson, John Bogdanoff, Glenn Whitmore, and more. Plus, we'll look at how this oddball issue fits into the bigger picture of early 90s DC, including some insider commentary and rising market value. There's even vintage ads, local comic shop shoutouts, and a surprising visit to Maryland. So the real question is, can Superman stories get too weird? Or is this the kind of chaos we secretly love? Let's dig in. Robin descends on Metropolis chasing down a cold lead from Gotham. A series of mysterious deaths have begun to attract media attention, and Robin believes it's no coincidence. In fact, he's convinced that there's a vampire on the loose. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure lurks around the morgue, staking dead bodies who turn out to be vampires. But this figure is no modern-day Van Helsing. He's a vampire himself, eliminating the competition. Elsewhere, Superman's best pal Jimmy Olsen is shocked when a shape-shifting creature named Ruthven attacks his friend Lucy Lane through her second-story window. He manages to startle the creature with a flash of his camera. Convinced the creature is a vampire, he gears up to try and track it down. While the creature continues his blood hunt in Metropolis, Jimmy and Robin eventually cross paths and decide to work together. They manage to corner Ruthven, but he's too powerful for them to take on alone, forcing Jimmy to call Superman for backup. Superman saves both Jimmy and Robin, but is shocked at the strength of the creature. In a surprise move, Ruthven attacks Superman, who uses his brain instead of brawn and flies Ruthven past the horizon and directly towards the rising sun, seemingly killing him. As the trio regroups, an ominous laugh is heard over Metropolis, indicating that this isn't the last time we'll be seeing Ruthven. This story continues in Superman Volume 2, number 70. This issue was written by Louise Simonson. Simonson is known for her work on titles such as Conan the Barbarian, X-Factor, and New Mutants. In 1991, she, along with artist John Bogdanoff and editor Mike Carlin, launched this title. Simonson would write for this title for 8 years until issue 86 in 1999. Later in 1992, Simonson worked on the Death of Superman storyline along with Carlin, Dan Jurgens, Roger Stern, and others. It was during that storyline in The Adventures of Superman 500 from June 1993 that Simonson and Bogdanoff introduced their character Steel. Among the other comic characters she co-created are Cable, Power Pack, Richter, Doomsday, and the X-Men villain Apocalypse. In recognition of her contributions to comics, Comics Alliance listed Simonson as one of 12 female comics creators deserving of Lifetime Achievement recognition. Speaking of John Bogdanoff, who worked on the art and cover for this issue, he would also leave the title after issue 86. Bogdanoff then drew 2 intercompany crossovers for DC Comics, Superman and Savage Dragon Metropolis in 1999, which was co-published with Image Comics, and Superman Aliens 2 God War in 2002, co-published by Dark Horse Comics. Inker Dennis Janke had been in the industry for almost 10 years by the time he worked on this issue. He would go on to work for the title for 9 more years. Bogdanoff and Janke also illustrated many covers for the Steel solo title during this period. Other works for DC included Action Comics, The Spectre, and Batman. Meanwhile, at Marvel, he primarily worked on Captain America. Glenn Whitmore was the lead colorist on this title, and he also worked with the team on the Death of Superman storyline. Whitmore has worked with publishers like Dark Horse Comics, Archie Comics, and many more. Alongside artists and editors, he contributed to the look and feel of the era that drew millions of new readers. His work on Man of Steel remains one of the most recognized aspects of early 90s superhero comics. Speaking exclusively to Read the Freaking Comics, Whitmore discusses his time on this issue. Bogdanoff and Janke were the art team I looked forward to coloring the most. Bog Superman came closest to capturing the Max Fleischer version, which is my favorite. Dennis Inkline and black spotting really pulled the page designs together, making it easy for a colorist like me to drop in my colors. John's penciling style indicated double lighting and reflected light on every panel, especially on the money shots, and Dennis translated it masterfully, which made it all the easier for me. Bog, in particular, said he tried to work in a money shot on each page. If you look at his body of work throughout the Superman run, you definitely can see that. Man of Steel number 14 is no exception. Letterer Bill Oakley was no stranger to DC titles, having worked on a number of the Superman titles: Batman, Lobo, Justice Society, and Hawkman. His most prominent work includes the first 2 volumes of Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill's The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and 2 runs on Batman Gotham Knights. Michael Carlin is listed as editor for this issue, while Dan Thorsland as assistant. Carlin worked for both Marvel and DC from the late 70s onwards. By 1986, he moved to DC permanently and became the group editor of the Superman titles. He oversaw the Death of Superman storyline and the subsequent introduction of characters like Con-El version of Superboy and John Henry Irons. He served as an executive editor at DC Comics from 1996 to 2002. In 2011, he became DC Entertainment's creative director of animation until his retirement in 2023. Speaking exclusively to Read the Freaking Comics, Carlin discusses this issue. We wanted to do a Superman versus magic supernatural story since we'd just done a more down-to-earth Crisis at Hand, and we're about to begin a year-long doomsday-driven Death and Return of Superman story. And teaming Superman with the awestruck teenager Robin was a fun new dynamic. He worked with Batman day in and day out, but Superman was a real superhero. As mentioned, Dan Thorsland was the editor at DC Comics during the early 1990s, playing a key role in shaping several titles. Working closely with writer Louise Simonson and artist John Bogdanov, he helped guide the new creative direction of Man of Steel, which was one of the 4 main Superman titles that year. Thorsland editorial oversight ensured story consistency across the interconnected Superman books, which operated as a weekly narrative. Dick Giordano was credited as executive editor on this issue. Having worked and left DC in the 1970s, editor-in-chief Jeanette Kahn brought Giordano back to DC in the 80s, initially as editor of the Batman titles. Giordano was named the company's new managing editor in 1981 and promoted to vice president executive editor in 1983, a position he held until 1993. This issue features the first appearance of Ruthven, whose full name is Baron Ruthven. The character's name is no doubt a reference to Lord Ruthven, a character from John Williams Polidori's 1819 novel The Vampire. He was one of the first vampires in English literature. The initial popularity of the vampire led to the character appearing in many translations and adaptations, including plays and operas, and Ruthven has continued to appear in modern works. An homage to the Ruthven vampire has appeared in several comic books by Marvel and DC. Originally, he appeared in the first issue of Marvel's Vampire Tales from 1973 as a possessor of the mystical book The Darkhold. An incidental character called Ruthven appears in later issues of the Sandman comic. This Ruthven is a man with a rabbit's head as well as prominent vampire fangs. The Robin in this issue is Tim Drake, who is the 3rd person to take up the mantle of Robin, Batman's sidekick. Drake was created by Marv Wolfman and Pat Broderick and first appeared in Batman number 436 from 1989. Tim became Robin after the death of the second Robin, Jason Todd. He would briefly become Batman, but eventually moved on from Robin and adopted the name Red Robin, a prominent member of the Bat family and founding member of Young Justice. Outside of crossover or obvious JLA activities, both Batman and Robin have mostly stayed outside of Metropolis unless invited by Superman. During some Silver Age goofiness in World's Finest Comics number 77 and 78 from 1955, Batman temporarily gains Superman-like powers. Part of the action occurs in Metropolis, with Batman operating solo during Superman's powerless state. A few issues later, in October of 1956, we see Batman and Robin are called to Metropolis without Superman to investigate events hinting he's gone missing. They work solo and ultimately help Superman return. Jump ahead to the Dark Knight Over Metropolis miniseries from 1990, which has Batman investigating Intergang in Metropolis on his own before eventually teaming up with Superman in later issues. Finally, there's a small run of 4 issues of Superman Batman from 2005, where Bruce Wayne visits Metropolis under civilian cover to loan items to a museum. He discovers Silver Banshee's plot and takes action. I'm a bit torn on this issue. On the one hand, I'm a fan of Bogdanov and Janke. I like the work on the interiors. Lines are clean, panels flow well, and there are some single action shots that really pop. On the other hand, I hate this cover. I really do. It is so oddly framed, with unusual character positioning and a Dutch angle that just doesn't work for me. I can see what they were going for, a large looming shadow that looks like Batman, Superman apparently frightened out of his mind. I just don't care for this cover. Vampires and superheroes are an odd mix. For every Blade, Morbius, and Mina Harker, we get stories like these, where Superman has to fight a vampire. Really? I mean, he can't bite him. Maybe hypnotize him if there was magic involved, but other than that, I see no major threat to him. Fortunately, it isn't Superman, but Robin and Jimmy Olsen who take on Baron Ruthven for most of this issue. I still don't get the appeal, however. This issue didn't really capture my attention or interest. Still, it's a fascinating little slice of the Man of Steel run. This issue has steadily gone up in value starting in May of 2024. Mint editions are selling for $47 according to PriceCharting.com. There's an issue on eBay for sale at $3.99, and ComicBookRealm.com is selling issues for about $4. 1992 saw the launch of Image Comics as a major new publisher. The company was formed by several former Marvel staffers. DC dominated the headlines with their Death of Superman storyline, which most of the creative team here worked on. The first issue holds the record for single biggest sales day in comics history. Shops recorded sales of $30 million in one day. Across all publishers, the estimated sales for 1992 ranges between 300 and 500 million, a significant increase from 1991. 1992 was a bit of a mixed bag for DC. While it's no surprise that DC's Superman number 75, The Death of Superman, was the biggest seller across all publishers that year, however, you'd have to look much further down the list to find DC's other top-selling titles, like Batman Shadow of the Bat in 65th place, and then even further into the 100s for Superman Man of Steel number 18 at 109. We have Lobo's Back number 1 at 110, and Robin 3 number 1 at 133. Many of the top 100 titles of the year were Marvel or Malibu/Image Comics releases. This issue of Superman Man of Steel did not make the top 300 list for 1992. DC was making headlines into television, however. The visually striking Batman the Animated Series featured superb writing by Paul Dini and won an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program. Live-action Superboy and The Flash were on TV screens in 1992, as well as the animated Swamp Thing. This issue features a mix of advertising styles from two different eras. We have video game ads mixed with Atlas bodybuilder offers, which many longtime viewers will know are my absolute favorite. Acclaim was promoting their Grand Prix racing game for Nintendo and Sega, while Kemco was doing the same for their Supercars racing game, and Nintendo promoting Smart Ball for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Spree Candy featured a crossword puzzle style ad, which is a unique approach. The Ad Council of the United States was offering a free information kit regarding the Constitution. This included a free copy of the document itself. DC were promoting their own titles in 3 separate pages, including Green Lantern, Doom Patrol, Catwoman, and more. Meanwhile, Mile High Comics had a full spread of back issues available. You could even call a 1-800 number and phone in your order. There was a list of upcoming comic book conventions, plus an ad to buy DC Comics in bulk. $300 would get you 1,000 comics. How do you like that deal? Finally, what I call the Atlas Body Page, a full-page spread featuring unique and oddball items you can order by mail. There are items such as FM radio watch, fake black belt certificates, GI dog tags, and a supposed treasure map of sunken and buried treasure, plus of course the famed Atlas Body in 7 Days ads. Portions of Superman's side quests in this issue take him to Maryland, specifically east of the Chesapeake Bay, so this is where I decided to find a local comic shop to feature. If you're in the area, I recommend you check out Craven's Comic Books and Collectibles located at 2833 Ocean Gateway in Cambridge, Maryland, or check them out at cravenshop.com. So there you have it. Superman vs. vampires, Robin hunting the undead in Metropolis, and Jimmy Olsen flashing more than just a camera. We took a deep dive into the strange magic meets muscle story from Man of Steel number 14, explored its place in the broader Superman mythos, and broke down the creative talents of Simonson, Bogdanov, and the crew, and even uncovered some forgotten treasures from 1992, both in the story and the ads. Whether you're here for the comic book history, the oddball villains, or the pure 90s nostalgia, thanks for hanging out. If you had fun, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives like this, and ring that bell so you never miss an issue we crack open. Got thoughts on Superman fighting vampires? Drop them in the comments. I love to hear your take. Until next time, make sure to read the freaking comics.